So, after, a couple of weeks of chaos, finally back with part two of our shock video. As in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the shocks. I'm going to be using the NASCAR Xfinity Series car. I'll tell you why here in just a few minutes, but we're going to be diving into the shocks, bump, rebound, slope, all that stuff, what to look for, how it works, when to do it, all of that coming up next. What's up, everybody? Thomas Brennan here. Thank you very much, as always, for joining me. And like I said, we're going to be diving into part two of our shock video. Now, a couple things to note. First, I was going to use the Next Gen Cup car for this, just because it's got the six-way adjustable shocks on it, which is the most adjustability that we have on any of the shocks in the sim. So if you understand those, you would understand pretty much any other car. And the reason I didn't is because today was the day I was going to be recording a bunch of videos, and of course stuff happened. During the podcast that we were recording this morning, my computer shut down 4 times. It's been just turning off for no reason. I went through, did a bunch of stuff to it. I think I've got it fixed. If you're watching this video, that's a very good sign that I got it fixed, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to record this or edit or anything like that. And so it pushed everything back, and now I'm up against a wall, and I need to get obviously this video done. I have a couple other videos I need to get done, but I also need to get the insider stuff done for this next week, because I haven't even started it yet. And one of the cars I got to do is the Xfinity. Now, the Cup car, the next gen car, is actually at the iRacing Super Speedway, which is not a very good track for discussing shocks. And so, in the interest of saving time, killing two birds with one stone, as they say, we're at Dover, which is next week's race, which is actually a really good track to cover shocks, because it's bumpy, but it also has very big transitions on entry and exit, which is huge for shock adjustments. It's one of the big things that if you can get your shocks dialed in right, it can make the ride so much smoother at a track like Dover. So that's why we're using the Xfinity car, and that's why we are at Dover. All right. So anyways, that all being said, let's head over to the garage and let's take a look. All right, so what I did was I took one of my setups, just kind of like a base setup for a track like Dover, and then I set the shocks all to 4. Now, I did this for a couple of reasons. Whenever I'm building setups for the truck, the Xfinity, and the Cup car, all right, I set all the shocks to 4, every shock setting to 4, and then I go out, I build my setup, and then the last, 15, 20% of the way there for me is my shocks, okay? And that's when I start tuning them. And like I said, I do that on all of the cars. Even on the dirt side of things, like the Dirt Midget, for example, when I'm building the insider sets for that, my shock package is the last thing that I'm messing with, is my shocks. When I'm out turning laps for like the feature setup, for example, in those cars, you can actually adjust the shocks while you're on the track racing. I will be fine tuning my shocks to get them dialed into where I want them. And then that's how I'll set the car for the insider program. So the shocks are always the last thing for me, but they're one of the most important. All right. They do a really good job of controlling the car. And the iRacing shocks nowadays, the asphalt ones are definitely better than the dirt, but even the dirt ones are better now, because one of the reasons why the shocks were kind of bad there for quite a while had more to do with the sidewall of the tires and less to do with the shocks. Since we've gotten these new tires on basically almost like all the cars, we've seen the shocks work a lot better, and I think that has a lot to do with the sidewalls of the tires being a lot stiffer. Because remember, the tire itself, the sidewall is like a spring, okay? It's got its own spring rate, which affects the actual springs and affects the shocks, all right? So the shocks do what they are supposed to do. Now, when I'm tuning them myself, I use Motec, okay? This is how I really dive in and tune my shocks. This is my custom workbook for the Xfinity. Now, this is the one that is available to buy. And for those of you who have already got this book from me, it probably looks a little different. This is the updated version. It'll be going up here on the website here for you to download very, very soon. But what I've done is I created essentially, which is like a makeshift dyno. Okay, so a shock dyno is, if I load up the this valving program real quick, a shock dyno, if I hit plot here, this is what it does. So it's going to give you the rating for that shock. So we have force, positive is compression, negative is rebound, and then we have velocity, okay, which is how fast it's moving. And normally they'll rate that shock at a certain speed, okay? So it would say, you know, on the dirt, a lot of times they're going to rate the shock at 3 inches a second, all right? So we have the velocity right here is 3 inches a second. So we would look at this shock and we would say that, hey, on this setting with that 30 clicks on the low speed compression and rebound, and 10 clicks on the high speed compression and rebound, this shock is at 3 inches a second, is rated at 200 pounds and 200 pounds. Okay, that's the rating on it. Okay, that's kind of how, or that's how a shock dyno should look. Now this is a controlled setting. Okay, a shock dyno is a controlled setting, whether it's on a sim like this, on a damper curve comparison tool from the web, from online, or a real life shock dyno. It's a controlled setting. Okay, we don't get that in iRacing. All right, we don't have that. iRacing doesn't give us that data. We don't know what the shocks are dynoed at. We have no clue. Okay, so what I have to do is I gotta try to figure that out. And so what I did was I, using the way that I calculate dynamic load, all right, and we can all talk about how that it's not correct and it's not 100% accurate and all stuff like that. That's fine. I 100% agree. It's not 100% accurate. But doing it the way that I do it and then coming up with my calculations, I'm able to get a rough estimate at what the shock technically dynos at, all right, which means that at that speed, and right now I'm doing these, this is the low speed here, the red is compression, green is rebound, and then over here we have the high speed compression, and then obviously there's no rebound on the Xfinity car for high speed, just high speed compression. But if we look at it, and I'm measuring this at 1.5 inches per second, because on the asphalt, low speed cutoff is around 1.5 inches a second, okay? Our numbers are pretty much what I want to see, or what I would expect to see. And the thing is that doing this, it allows me to make comparisons so I can see how much it's changing, which is what I always talk about with Motec. I'm looking for what the change is, okay? I'm not looking for the actual data point, right? I'm not saying, hey, this is at 420 pounds, 1.5 inches a second. That's what it is. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is when I go in and change that and I leave everything else the same, now I want to see what that difference is. That's how I use it, okay? So this is how one of the ways that I tune shocks. I also have shock tuning track reports, which you can see here. It shows all the different colors and stuff like that for the different bumps and how fast the shock is moving at certain points. You can see here as we come up out of the turn, this point right here, this is that transition, right, where we go up the hill and the car actually starts to lift up because we're going up over that hill, because right now these are pretty soft shocks with everything at 4. Same thing when we drop down into the corner. As you can see here, right before the corner, you can see where it's red as we're dropping down into the corner, okay? So these are different tools that I use to tune my shocks, and they work very, very well for me, and they save me a ton of time, which is huge. Now, a lot of you don't have these, all right? And that's fine. Okay, and the reason I showed this stuff is to illustrate to you, you can do this without that, all right, because that's how we're going to cover this. You can absolutely tune your shocks without using all that Motec stuff or Atlas or whatever telemetry it is that you decide to use, okay? You can, all right? And the way that you do it is this, what we're going to cover. So first of all, you always want to get your high-speed stuff set first, okay? The reason why is the high speed is going to affect the low speed, and the low speed is what really handles the handling, okay? So high speed settings, so that would be compression, rebound, and also the slopes. Those are more designed for like bumps, right? Curb strikes, big transitions, things like that. That's where the high speed comes into effect. Low speed is for your transient handling movements, okay? So this is when you roll off the throttle and you turn the car in, that weight transfer, that's a low speed movement, right? When you get the car set and then you start to pick up the accelerator and the weight shifts to the rear, that's a transient movement. Those are all low speed adjustments, all right? So we want to make sure that when we dial in our low speed adjustments that they're not going to change with the high speed, because here's the deal, they can. They absolutely can. The high speed will affect the low speed. And from my experience on here, this is my personal experience, okay? I find that the high speed will affect the low speed more than the low speed will affect the high speed. Meaning, if I were to set my low speed adjustments first, get the car handling good, and then I set my high speed stuff to deal with bumps and transitions and things like that, I realize that my handling doesn't feel as good as it did before. Whereas if I set all the high speed stuff first, get that all figured out, and then dial in my handling, now it stays much more consistent, okay? So how do we do this? Well, first things first, all right? We want to make sure that the car is handling bumps, transitions, any types of rough spots or anything like that, and we want to make sure that it's doing it smoothly. Okay, remember, we don't just want to hit a bump and have the car just like hammer it like it's on a pogo stick, right? Or like it's just a solid, shock there. That's one thing that a lot of people will do, is they'll just crank the settings up to 10 or they'll max them out. And for me, you don't want to do that because the shock's not working the way that it should be working. Yes, there are instances where I'll have, a 10 on the slope or even like a 9 or 10 on the high-speed compression, but it's not, everything's not maxed out. If you've got a 10 on the compression and then a 10 on the rebound, right, you've essentially got a shock that's not going to really move, okay? And if you didn't watch the first video, remember, when you have that shock, right, the stiffer that the shock is, the quicker the weight is applied to the tire, all right, on compression. The softer it is on compression, all right, the slower the weight is applied to the contact patch, because the shock is what is absorbing it. Remember, shocks are a timing tool, okay? On the rebound, all right, it's essentially the opposite. So the softer the shock, that means that shock is going to extend quicker, which is going to allow that load to actually stay on the contact patch. Whereas if you have the shock super stiff and tied down, what happens is now when you're in that movement where the shock wants to extend, it can pick the tire off the ground or unload that tire quicker than it can extend. Okay, so it's a balancing act, all right? That's the thing. Now, one thing to remember, the rebounds, you're going to see far more results with the rebounds than the compressions, okay? And it's not because there's something wrong with the sim or there's something wrong with the shock or something like that. That's how it is in real life too, okay? It is. Whether you're racing dirt or, GT3 cars, the rebound is really you're going to see far more results. On the compression, you might make an adjustment, a click or two, and you're like, God, I don't really feel that. Where you do a click or two on the rebound, you're like, damn, that was a big change, okay? So the rebound stuff is going to definitely feel much more, you're going to feel it a whole lot more than you would the compression stuff, all right? So if we look here really quick, this is just me coming out of the corner here. I went out and turned a couple laps at 4, all right? But let's just watch this as it goes up over the transition. Did you hear that? Listen to that again. Hear how the RPMs picked up as we're coming up over? That is the tires, right? The suspension actually unloading and the tires spinning a little bit, okay? Another thing that will happen here is you can see as we come up over the corner, see how I'm straightening the wheel out, right? As we're coming off straight. What happens a lot of times, especially later on in the run at a track like Dover, is you're going to have that wheel to the left because the car is pushing. And now when you come up over that transition and you got that wheel cocked like that, now the car is going to snap and go down, okay? Because how you come up over that transition is going to affect how that weight transfers. You can come up over the transition and the right rear, because it's compressing more than the left rear, it can make the car feel loose, right? So that's something to think about. If you are coming over transitions or hitting bumps, pay attention to which way the car is shifting, if it is shifting. because the way that you fix that is with your shocks, the high speed adjustments. All right. So for example, and I'll do this really quick. All right. When we're going over those transitions, okay, or when we're I should say it like this, when we're setting this stuff, the first thing that I want to set for me is I want to set my slopes. I want to do my slopes first. The reason why is they are going to really help control the car. All right. So to give you an example of this, okay, we're going to leave our compression rebound settings the same, except we're going to put our slopes at 1. We're just going to go from 4 to 1. All right. I'm going to go out and I'm going to turn a lap real quick. And I want you to watch how much this car is going to move around now. Especially when we drop down into this transition. See how much it's bouncing already? Look at how much that thing's bouncing. Not only that, the car's getting loose in the corner. Look at that. See how it's bouncing? See how the car got loose there? That's just from going from 4 to 1 on the slopes. Now, you might be thinking, well, Tommy, if that's the case, why would I ever decrease my slopes? Well, remember, this is a fairly bumpy and rough track, right? So smoother tracks, you could run less slope and control the platform more with those high speed and low speed compression rebound adjustments, right? On bumpier tracks, you use the slopes and then you use less dampening, which would be the high speed compression and high speed rebound if we were on the next gen car, to balance it out, right? So that's the way that those kind of work together. Yes, there are times where you will turn up both, but for the most part, it's really more about how it feels to you, okay? This is why I do the slopes first. So for me, I want to get my slopes set first, because once I get the platform to control the way I want it to control, then I can fine tune it with the high speed, the actual individual high speed compression and rebound. All right. So what we're going to do is when we're coming up out of that transition there, all right, because I'm just working on the transition right now. That's the biggest thing for me. What I want is I want to make sure that that platform of the car is staying more level. Now, if we think about it, right, as we're coming up, remember that banking, it's not a straight up, it's not even, right? It's not equal. That banking's going like this, right? So as we come up, the left side, okay, is going to be different than the right side. The right side's going to actually be compressing more, and then as we come up, it's going to switch, right? So what I want to do is I'm going to actually put the high speed compression slope on the right front at 5. I'm going to do the rebound on the right front at 4. On the right rear, I'm going to go 5 as well, and then I'm going to go 4. Okay? Then on the left side, what we're going to do is we're going to go I'm going to go 4 on the slope, and I'm going to go on the compression slope, and 6 on the rebound slope on the left front. I'm also going to try to handle when we drop down in. And then on the left rear, what I'm going to do, when we're coming up, we're going to go 6 and 5. Okay? And now, watch how much better this is. I mean, you can already tell just right now how much better it is. See how much better it handled that drop down into the corner there? See how it didn't rev up the motor as we were coming out? We didn't spin the tires. Got a little bit of it there. And also, when you're doing this, you want to see how the car reacts when you're braking too. right? Not just when you're on and off throttle, but also when you're using some brake, because when you brake, remember, that's transferring weight as well. All right, so you can see that right there already. Much better. Much better. Now, next, what we're going to do is we're going to actually leave the slopes alone, because I'm going to tell you right now, I'm actually pretty happy with that. The only thing that I could probably do, and I think I am going to do that, is the left front still kind of bouncing a little too much for me. So I'm going to actually increase that left front slope just a little bit more. All right. And the way that I set the slopes, I use the variation in the shock change. I watch the how much the shock actually moves from peak to valley, and then I use the suspension histogram to help dial it in. So if you look at this real quick, your slope is essentially this, right? It's actually talking about the slope. So I would use the slope to change that. I mean, if we look at this right here, and we look at the one that we just did, and I think this is with all fours, and then we look at the one we just did where I changed the slopes, right? You can see the difference in there. So that's how I normally will set my slopes. But you can do it just like I did, and then start watching each corner of the car, right? And you can do that in replay. Watch each corner of the car. How much is that moving? All right, is it moving on the way down or the way up? And then just adjust that slope. Once you get it close, okay, then you're good. The next thing you got to do is you're going to actually set the high-speed compression. Just, we only have high-speed compression on this car, but if it was the next-gen car, it would be the high-speed compression and the high-speed rebound. If it was the truck, you would just do the slopes, right? And then you would go to the low-speed stuff. So we're going to do the high-speed stuff. Now, I can already tell you what I want to do here is I'm going to actually, the right sides, I'm going to leave, or I'm going to drop the compression on the right sides, the high-speed compression, down. And I'm going to increase the left front 1, and I'm going to increase the left rear 2. Okay? And the reason for that is when we're coming out of that transition, right? When that thing's going, I want to make sure that we're maintaining contact. Okay? It's really, really simple. And normally when you would do this, you would want to run, 5 to 10 laps. You wouldn't just do 2 laps. I'm only doing that for the sake of time. I know you guys can't feel the wheel, but that feels much, much better. So coming up out of that corner, we're still getting a little bit of, you can hear it revving up just a little bit of spin. And so what I need to do is I'm going to increase that right rear rebound slope, just so it stays down just a little bit longer. I think one click on that will work, because after that, we're going to start adjusting our low speed stuff, okay? And you guys, that's literally how I set the high speed stuff. Now, keep in mind, I've been doing this for a long time, okay? I've got more hours in this cockpit tuning on this stuff than I even cared to discuss, okay? It's a ton. But it just takes some practice, all right? It really does. It just takes some practice. So what I'll do is I will actually put this up on the website, and all you got to do is, if you haven't signed up on the website yet, all you got to do is just go to schoolsimracing.net, click on the button that says Join Community. You get access to the free membership site, and this guide, I'll put this guide up there, okay? So when you go to tune the low speed stuff, you're going to go one corner at a time. Now, here's the thing about the shocks that you need to understand, and this is really, really important, okay? I use the shocks as a way to build long run speed into my setups, all right? Because one of the things that's going to happen, okay, over the course of a long run, right, is the tires wear, fuel burns off, things like that. The car's going to go through some changes. So one of the best ways that I can help to control the consistency of those changes is through the shocks. All right, at least that's what I found for me. It seems to work really, really well for me. And that's for the truck, the Xfinity, and the next gen Cup car. Okay, if I've got a setup that I've got to run a certain set of springs on it because that's what's giving me the best stability or the best aero package, and now I need to compensate for it, right? Well, I don't want to run, 45% cross weight because that's not gonna, the rear end's gonna be sliding out after 20 laps. So, well, what can I do to overcome that, right? If I got to run more cross weight than what I need, well, what I can do is I can adjust my shocks to really help me loosen the car up, because now I'm loosening the car up. For example, if I want it to be looser, I'm loosening it up when we're talking on and off throttle, and that's what's important, right? It's not just like off the throttle rolling through the corner like, oh, that big spring's helping me turn. No, this is what's happening with the car as you are on and off throttle, applying that brake, stuff like that, right? That weight transferring, that's really, really important. Okay, so I've always had people ask me, hey man, how do you build those long run setups like you do? One of the keys to them is the shocks. That's what works for me. Now, disclaimer, because I know someone's going to send me a message, or multiple people will, because I know there are people who still do it to this day, and they're fast. They're super fast, and their setups are great, okay, for them. There are people out there who just max out their shocks, and boom, they're off to the races, and they're out there doing phenomenal. That's great. If that works for you, then do it. That's the great thing about this, is you can do whatever you want. Okay, and it be good, right? And when I talk about how I start with my shocks at all fours and then I adjust them after I get everything else set, understand if I started with them at all tens, right, that base setup that I would end up building would be different. It would be different than what I build and then adjust my shocks to get what I want out of it. All right, you can build the car to react however you want based on what you start with. So if you just max out your shocks, then you can build the setup around that for it to work, all right? Now, for me personally, I think the car is way too stiff and unresponsive when it's like that, but that's me, all right? That's just me. If it works for you, by all means, do it, right? Because at the end of the day, that's all that matters, is does it work for you, right? No real-life race car driver is going to be like, well, I mean, that's a race-winning car, but I refuse to drive it with that spring package. No one's going to do that, right? I mean, no one's going to do that. They're going to be like, well, it's going to be first. Okay, I'll do it. Right? Like, so whatever works best for you, do that. Okay. That's the thing that you need to understand. Do that. If you've seen stuff out there where it's like, hey, look, man, this is what you want to do, and you try it and it works for you, then do it. Right? If you try this way and it doesn't work for you, then don't do it. Okay. So anyways, moving on. Let's get to the low speed adjustments. So the first thing is I know, because of this, the way that this track is, right? Because we're carrying, so it's essentially a big Bristol. We're going to be carrying a lot of speed into the corners. The right front is something that is going to definitely heat up, and the car's going to get tight, right? Even if I start off with it super loose, it's still going to get tight if I'm not careful. So I want to make sure that I'm taking care of this thing and protecting that right front from the very beginning. One of the ways that we can do that is through our shocks, right? Controlling how much load we are sending over to that corner of the car, all right? So what I want to do here is I want to make sure that when we're coming down into the corner, that right front there's force being applied there so we can get that turn in. But the moment that we're done getting that turn in, I don't want to be using that thing no more, right? I want to be using every other wheel on the car because I want to save that right front for when I need it. All right, so I'm going to actually leave that low speed compression at 4 here, and I'm going to actually increase the low speed on the left front 2 clicks. Now, the reason why I went 2 clicks is because I want to feel the adjustment. All right, Once I do that, if it feels pretty good and I think it might be a little too much, then I'll back it off 1 click. But I'm always going to go 2 clicks unless I've got it close, and then I'll fine tune, all right? Because I want to feel the adjustment initially, okay? And if you do that, that'll increase in the left front shock. The bump on the left front shock will loosen the car up on entry, okay? Now, the other thing that I want to do here is I want to actually make sure we got our entry, right? I'm going to adjust for my entry, my middle, and my exit all right now, because I'm going to kind of get a base low speed package on here. I know that I'm going to want the car more freed up. That's just the way that I like it. So as I increase that left front compression, I am also going to increase the right rear compression, which should help through the middle and the exit. Then I'm going to go to my rebounds on the front, and this is really important, okay? Remember, I said you're going to see far more with the rebound than the compressions. Think of the rebounds as more of a big adjustment and the compressions as a fine-tune adjustment, all right? The front rebound is key. I mean, it is so important when we talk about the exit of the corner. When you're starting to pick up the throttle from the middle out of the corner, these front rebounds this comes into play big time, man, big time. So if I want the car to be a little bit more loose coming off the corner, well, what do I want? Well, if I've got more weight going to the left rear, remember, if it goes to the left rear, the car's going to come off straighter. It's going to be tighter. If I got more going to the right rear, that's going to help us turn. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that I get some weight to that right rear a little bit quicker than weight to that left rear. So what I'm going to do is instead of going 2 clicks on each shock, I'm going to do a 2-click offset. So we're going to go down 1 click on the left front, but up 1 click on the right front. Okay, so that's a 2-click change essentially across those front shocks when you think about adding one, taking one away. All right. And then lastly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to do the same thing on the rear rebounds. All right, because this will help getting the car in and loosen up a little bit on entry and then also on exit. So we're going to increase the left rear rebound 1 click and decrease the right rear rebound 1 click. Okay. And every one of those adjustments helps free the car up, all right? Especially on throttle, which is really important for me because that's the way that I like the car to feel. I like it to be like a dirt car. I mean, I've talked about this numerous times. I want it to be driving off the right rear. I want it to be coming off the corner like that, or at least feel like that. Obviously, I want the left rear to be driving the car too, but see that car is a little bit loose coming off that corner there, but that's okay. I don't mind that. Because overall it feels pretty good. And as you can see, the car feels pretty good. It's basically doing what I want it to do. And most importantly, it's comfortable. And that's the key, right? Having a car that's comfortable, that you don't feel that's like, you know, it's right on the razor's edge and one little bobble it's going to wreck. To me, that's far more important than getting that last fraction of a tenth out of it. I would much rather have my car be comfortable and consistent over the course of 150 laps or 200 laps, whatever it is, than me being on the ragged edge that time where I one little mistake and I'm screwed. All right. So that's the key, is getting it comfortable. And like I said, man, it's all a matter of going out there, giving those things an adjustment, testing it, and see how it feels. And the best way for you to do that, okay, is this. Whatever car you want to do this on, I would recommend starting with the truck first, just so you can get a feel for the slopes. I would put the low speed compression and rebound, both of those, I'd put them at 4, okay? And then I would take the slopes and I'd put them at 1. Go out, run a couple laps, and then come in and just pick one corner and one adjustment on that corner and max it out, right? So take the left rear, for example. Take the left rear rebound slope and increase that to 10, and then go out and drive it. And feel the difference. Feel the difference in how that truck's reacting in and out of the corners, over bumps, right? You can do a track like Dover, or Bristol's another one. Chicagoland is bumpy. Charlotte's a really good one for learning how to dial in shocks with bumps, because that track's really bumpy. Fontana, California, Auto Club, whatever the hell it's called now, is another one, right? So tracks like that, right? But just increase that rebound slope to 10, go out, turn a couple laps, just feel the difference. Then come back in, put it back to 1, and then go to a different corner of the car and do an adjustment, right? Go to the right rear, and instead of the rebound this time, put the compression slope to 10 and feel the difference. All right, try to feel that difference in it, okay? And then once you kind of got an idea of, all right, this is what that slope does, this is how it feels, then start tinkering with those low speed adjustments for the handling, and do the same thing. Leave them all at 4, go out, turn the right rear compression to 10, and then go out and turn a couple laps. Then come back in, put it back to 4, put the left front rebound at 10, okay, and feel the difference. A lot of times, especially on new tires, it's going to be subtle. All right, that's why you want to make those big adjustments so you can feel that difference. But once those tires wear, that's where you really start to feel those shocks come into play, or at least that's where I really start to feel them come into play. And for me, it's huge. It's an absolute game changer. And hopefully this shows you a little bit of how to do it. And, that way you can get your car more comfortable out there on the track. All right, so that's going to do it, you guys, for this video. Now, really quick before I go, do me a favor. If you liked it, please hit that like button. Let me know down in the comments below if this helped. Hopefully it did. I know we covered a lot, and shocks are one of those things I've gone over this, numerous times. I've got other videos I've done on this, but it's always good to just kind of refresh and recover the topic, because it's one of those things on a car that is complex, but when you can understand it and you can get it to work well for you, it can help a ton. It really, really can. And like I said, whether you tune them like I do or you just max them out, whatever works best for you, that's the key. So hopefully this helps you. And yeah, I'll do a Fast Friday video here very, very soon. Tomorrow's Fast Friday video I'm going to be doing on the ARB, the anti-roll bar, because I also get a lot of questions about that. But maybe next week I'll do the Fast Friday video comparing lap times of different shock packages, right? Minimums, average, putting them all at 5, putting them all at 1, max them out of 10, or then running a shock package like I run them. I'll figure out a way to test that evenly and fairly so we can kind of judge it. But, in the meantime, you can do it yourself, test it yourself, and see what works best for you. Because like I said, at the end of the day, that's what matters, whatever's best for you. So anyways, that's going to do it. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys coming, checking out the video. Like I said, I hope this helps. And yeah, let me know if it does down in the comments below. But that'll do it. Thank you as always. Big shout out to all of the members of the Winner Circle here on the channel. You can names, right, should be here on the screen right here. So big shout out to you guys. If you want to join that or check that out, there's a link down in the description below. Get you access, you get access to the recordings of the live streams and some emotes and some stuff like that. Just a couple little extra perks here for the channel, help support the community. And then lastly, if you want to join the SSR community, We've got like 4 or 5 thousand people in there now. It grows more and more every day. Even with me not being as active this last like 2 months with everything that's been going on, it's still growing, and we still got a ton of people in there helping each other out, racing together, testing together, the leagues going, everything. So if you want to check that stuff out, along with any of the other stuff that we've got, whether it be the insider program, the free membership site with the free setups on it, the setup guides, all of that stuff is down in the description below. So check that stuff out. But that'll do it. Thank you very much as always. And until next time, I want to wish you good luck, good racing. Take care.